Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and the iPhone 16 Pro has been out for over 6 months at this point. Many people consider this to be the perfect sized iPhone, and so I thought I'd go over what it's like after 6 months of use, how it's held up, we'll talk about battery life and more. Now, the iPhone's design is pretty iconic at this point. It hasn't changed a whole lot, and you can see this is the desert titanium color, and you may love this color or you may not. It's not one of my favorites, but one of my favorites, hopefully they bring back next year, is sort of the Sierra blue. I would love to see a return to more colorful colors, but overall, it's a decent device. The design is great. The overall weight is nice to hold in your hands. It doesn't feel too heavy. It's well balanced, and the overall frame is very nice as well, as it curves around the outside edge, making it very comfortable to hold. Compared to something such as the iPhone 13 Pro, which is squared off and a little bit easier to hold, this just feels a little bit nicer since it's more comfortable, but it is more slippery if you're not using a case with it like that. Of course, the outside edge is made of titanium, which looks pretty nice. We've got our volume buttons, our action button, which I have to admit I haven't really used a whole lot since they've actually introduced it. I typically use it for things such as the flashlight. So the flashlight animation is great. I use that all the time. And of course, on the bottom, we've got USB-C, which is also helpful, our speakers and microphone. And on the right-hand side, we've got the new camera control button. I honestly find that I only use this to quickly open up the camera. Sometimes you can open up visual intelligence with it, but I find that I don't typically use it for that, where you can open that up, use visual intelligence, and you'll see I haven't even opened it on this phone because I find other applications more useful for that. We've got our power sleep wake button, and as far as the overall frame, it's held up tremendously well. Whether you're using this phone full time or another, it seems to hold up better than the previous years. I don't have any scratches on the rear lenses or anything like that, and I don't have any scratches on the front because I have a screen protector. But I have to say that this year's screen is holding up a lot better as far as the overall glass compared to the previous years. For whatever reason, it just seems to be a little bit harder, it's more difficult to scratch, and in general, that's a great thing. So I'm really appreciative that they've really upgraded the overall design of that, and that's definitely a bonus this year. So if you wanted to use it without a screen protector, that's fine, or without a case. I really enjoy the feel of it without a case, but if you want to keep your overall device safe and your personal identity safe, today's sponsor Incogni has you covered. Finding someone's personal information online has become increasingly simple and can reveal personal information you don't really want others to know. There are data brokers trying to gather as much information about you as possible, with whole teams dedicated to gathering and selling your personal information. Incogni helps remove your personal data online so it can no longer be exploited by data brokers and others. Within minutes of signing up for Incogni with my own information, such as an email address, home address, and phone numbers, Incogni identified 10 websites and had already sent removal requests for them. Now, after months of using it, they've sent hundreds of data removal requests and completed hundreds of them as well. When Incogni has successfully verified removal, you can see everything done in your activity list. I used to try and remove all this data myself, and it just takes hours. Incogni does that work for you, saving a ton of time, and I genuinely recommend you try it out and get all of your information out of others' hands and back into your own. To try it for yourself risk-free and with a 30-day money-back guarantee, check out the link in the description and use code ZOLOTECH to get 60% off an annual plan. Thanks again to Incogni for sponsoring this video. Now, as far as the overall battery life, being a smaller phone, if you're coming from maybe a 16 Pro Max, you're definitely going to notice a difference. Most people that I've talked to seem to get about 5 to 6 hours of screen on time. If we take a look at the overall battery on this one has not been my main phone. I've been using the Pro Max as this only has 4 cycle counts. So I reached out to my friend Steve Mosier, since he's been using it since day one, to see what his battery is like. And after 151 cycles, he's still at 100%. This is what we're seeing with the iPhone 16s this year. We're seeing basically it stays around 100% until you hit about 250 cycles. Then it starts to degrade over time, as any battery does, and that's pretty normal. As far as regular use, well, you can see the other day, 3 days ago or so, he had about 2 hours or 1 hour and 56 minutes of screen active time, 3 hours and 4 minutes of screen idle time, and used about 50% of his battery. Depending on the day, he seems to be getting anywhere between 4 to 6 hours of screen on time with regular use. It just depends what apps he's using. So in general, you can see that here. It's not phenomenal battery life, but that's what I've been hearing from many of you, about 5 to 6 hours at the most. If you're just watching videos, maybe you have Wi-Fi and cellular off, then you'll get much better battery life. But overall, it seems to be about 5 to 6 hours. When it comes to charging, we have, of course, charging through USB-C, but again, it's only at about 28 watts or so. So you're still talking an hour and a half, 2 hours to a full charge. You can use MagSafe, of course, up to 25 watts with the special adapter, but that only stays at 25 watts for a limited amount of time. So overall, it's still a fairly slow charging to phone. When it comes to the display, well, the display looks great. It looks great in the sunlight, and you'll see I'm not even at 100% brightness right now. We're outside and it looks pretty good. No real complaints here. It seems to be holding up very well that way, and it doesn't seem to auto dim itself until it gets really, really warm. Much better than previous years, and that's something I've noticed greatly on this display. Also, PWM doesn't seem to bother my eyes. However, it does definitely have PWM, but it seems to be at a much higher rate, above about 39% brightness. So if you're below that brightness, it definitely can affect it and maybe bother your eyes. But if you're super sensitive to it, that's probably the only person that it's going to bother. If you've seen some PWM displays, it will bother your eyes. About 1 in 10 people could feel nauseated, maybe have headaches or eye strain, but this one doesn't seem to bother me, and I think for most people that will be the case. Of course, when it comes to the cameras, well, this is a high point when it comes to the 16 and 16 Pro models. They're really phenomenal cameras, and in fact, I'm using this camera right now from the 16 Pro Max to actually record this. If I swing this around, we'll go to video, spin it around, you'll see I'm recording with a 16 Pro Max. The entire video is recorded with it. I'm using a DJI mic for the overall audio, and maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't, but I'll listen to the audio after and see if it's worth using. But overall, the camera is great, whether that's photos, video. The video is where it really shines. Photos are okay. Some people aren't crazy about the algorithm, but the great thing is this year you can adjust that with overall tone if you want to. Go into your camera, adjust the tone if you don't really like it, and really optimize it for whatever you prefer. So that's something that's definitely a bonus this year, where if you're not happy with the way it looks, you can just change it. Maybe darken it there, brighten it, whatever works best for you, and then of course set it to whatever your preference is. Overall reception is generally decent, but I wouldn't say it's as good as some of the other phones I've used. When I've taken trips with this, when I've gone to San Francisco area, I actually found that the S25 Ultra had better reception for me. However, the 16 Pro was pretty good in general, and I've really had no issues with Wi-Fi. You'll see I'm on Wi-Fi now, connected to my home router, and in general it works pretty well. But there are times it will just drop and then come back. So there's been some issues with iPhone, and they're really starting to work on that with their new modem in the 16E. So that's something we're going to see in the iPhone 17 models. Their all-new modem that works on their own devices, that they can really optimized to help with overall performance and battery life. So I think we'll see more of that in the future. One other thing I wanted to mention is overall Bluetooth has been spotty for some. You'll see it's taking a second to connect as it's connecting next to another device here, but when it connects, it works well. I really haven't had a ton of issues, but I know quite a few of you have, where it just doesn't stay connected, it will drop, but Apple does seem to patch those with updates. So overall, it seems to be decent, but there are occasional issues from time to time, but I think they're getting better, and I definitely think Apple's really focusing on the overall quality of connectivity and things like that. But hopefully they really improve their software with iOS 19 to fix AirPods connectivity and all the other odd issues we've been having. When it comes to overall daily use, well, I use this regularly as my normal phone as far as the Pro Max version goes, and I typically use it for things such as music, in Apple CarPlay. I use it for photos, of course, video, recording video like this, and typically social media, whether that's YouTube, Twitter, or X, Instagram, TikTok, or any of the others. It seems to be fine, and that's my normal use case for it. So I just use it as sort of a social media device, connecting with you, seeing what you think about different devices, if there's bugs, and more like that. When it comes to Apple Intelligence, this is definitely an area this year where it's been let down. I showed earlier that I rarely go into visual intelligence to recognize things, and while that's sort of nice, we can see what it thinks about these trees overall, see what it sees in the overall picture here. Let's see what it comes back with. We'll say ask, continue, next. You'll see I haven't even set it up on this phone, but we'll just go through it, and you'll see it says asking ChatGPT. Let's see what it sees here. There are pine trees generally in the background, and it takes a while to figure that out. So This is something that I find just takes too long, isn't super accurate. I find it's better with things such as Google's Gemini or any of the other services such as ChatGPT directly, where you could just install it on your iPhone. So you'll see it's just not even working right now, and we've had a problem. Please try again. So let's try it one more time. We'll just take a photo here, see what it says. We'll ask and see if it will work. And again, I have these issues with Apple Intelligence, whether that's writing tools, sometimes I have to correct it, and it's okay, but it definitely needs some improvement, and Apple's acknowledged that. So again, it's not going to work. We'll try one more time and just say search here. See if it will search with Google and get that, since we're connected to the internet. There we go. And it sees the table. It doesn't see the trees that I wanted it to see. So again, that's something that's a bit odd. Maybe it should let me choose between those things, but it's not something I find super useful. And I don't think it's a reason to upgrade to this phone. When it comes to the speakers, well, Apple's been pretty good at this for a few years. They go nice and loud. So if I play this song here, we'll turn it up. We'll move forward. You'll see it goes nice and loud, up to about almost 90 decibels or 90 decibels or so, stays nice and clear, is very clean as far as the overall sound. Bass could be a little bit better, but we are talking about really small speakers here. We have great stereo sound from the speakers, but in general, I think most people will be very happy with the speakers from the latest phones. They sound clean, have great clarity, and get the job done. When it comes to the speed and performance, well, I really have no complaints here except for optimization issues with iOS. Speed and performance is nice and fast, whether you're scrolling through, and excuse the plane going overhead if you can hear it, but as we're scrolling through, things are nice and fast. Now, some people will say this isn't truly 120 hertz, but unless you have tools to measure that, Apple ramps this up and down as needed. So if you're scrolling, it can ramp up to 120 hertz, but based on how you're using it, it could be 60 hertz. If the screen is just sitting still, it could go down to 1 hertz, as it doesn't need that. So since you don't need a fast refresh rate just sitting here like this, when we go in, it can cycle or ramp up and down. So that's something that I think isn't really an issue, and performance-wise, the latest chipsets are great. If we go into something such as Geekbench, and I won't run this right now, but we have 8 gigs of RAM, you'll see the A18 Pro at 4.04 gigahertz. So overall, very fast. I really have no complaints with that. Games are fine. Call of Duty, Minecraft, all of those work as you would expect. Of course, that does mean that the phone is going to heat up a bit, and we've seen this where it can get quite hot. Now, it should never get hot enough to burn your hand, but sometimes it can pull down the processing speed or charging to sort of compensate for the overall heat dissipation. So it's something that needs to cool down the chipset, and if you have it in a case, that's definitely going to make a difference. So just keep in mind it will get hot. They're supposed to make this even better with better thermal management next year, maybe with a vapor chamber or something else. But in general, it seems to be pretty good. I've never personally had it overheat or give me that overheat message. Now, if you're wondering if you should wait for the iPhone 17 later this year, we do expect an iPhone 17, a 17 Pro, a 17 Pro Max, and an all-new super thin 17 Air. That's something that we're waiting for, and it looks like Apple is going to make sort of a little change here and hopefully have much better battery life, a different camera bar or camera tray here, and just some improvements overall with cameras and much more. So if you wanted something, you're really wondering if you should upgrade, I would probably hold off until then and see what Apple has to offer if you've waited already. It's only a few months away, as is iOS 19. iOS 19 is expected to be shown in just a couple months here on June 9th, and on June 9th we'll see the first versions with the public release around the iPhone 17 launch in just a few more months in September. So I would probably hold off, wait for iOS 19, see what that has to offer, see what devices it supports, and then make your decision based on that. But overall, I think the 17 is going to be a slight design change, maybe an even bigger change with folding phones in 2026. As far as anything else, well, I think it is the perfect phone as far as the overall size, but for me, I like the extra battery of the Pro Max, and Apple is definitely having some sales impact from the 16E. It seems that people are buying the 16 Pro less and less, going for the cheaper 16E for now, as it has really great battery life. I would argue better battery life and better reception, and if you don't care about cameras, of course, you could opt for the 16E with its single camera. Everything else, though, with the ProMotion display, 120 hertz is definitely a big deal to many people, and just overall, it's a better phone on the Pro side. But either way, it's something that you'll have to think about if you haven't upgraded already. So that's everything for the iPhone 16 Pro. I think it's a great phone overall, and I am getting a little tired of the design and can't wait to see something a little bit different, as it's been many years, and Apple used to change it every couple of years. So to see something a little different, I would definitely welcome, and maybe some different color options. Let me know what you think of the iPhone 16 Pro in the comments below, and of course I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.